Hi, welcome to this video update, which is all about learning from one of the greatest strategists and tacticians of all time. He's also one of the best psychologists of recent years. Now, in terms of the person we're going to be learning from today, his name is John Boyd. I'm sure most people watching this video have never heard of him. He's one of the most influential Americans of the last 100 years. Why? Well, he started off as a fighter pilot in the US Air Force, the most successful pilot ever. But his influence on the military, in terms of strategy and tactics, probably the most influential person ever. But not only that, he was a fantastic psychologist, and he developed a way of thinking, a kind of mental map or a mental framework, which Forex traders can use to achieve success. While it just developed for the US military at the time, he wanted it to have wider recognition, and it is now more widely recognized in business, in sport. The emergency services use it. It can be used in many different areas of life. It's called the OODA loop. And if you were to look at great traders like Bruce Kavanagh, George Soros, they would use the OODA loop way of thinking in their trading. Boyd came up with the way of thinking probably 50 years before they did. Lot you can learn from the guy, very colourful character as well. I'm just going to do a short intro clip to him with some quotes, then we're going to come back and discuss the OODA loop and how it can help you in your Forex trading in more detail.
Became a pilot, the greatest fighter pilot in American history. From the proving ground of the Korean War, he went on to win recognition as the flight instructor who defeated every pilot who challenged him in less than 40 seconds. But as good as 42nd Boyd was behind the controls of an F-86 Sabre, his mark on history came after he left the cockpit.
But he left behind a legacy of monumental proportions. Scholars of warfare see him as a peer of Sun Tzu and Clausewitz. And while his name remains barely known even in the military, this fighter pilot's theories form the foundation of America's present overwhelming military.
Back after that short clip there of John Boyd, massive influence on the US military. He influenced weapon design in the US Air Force, but also in the Army. He wrote tactical manuals for the Marines and changed the way that they fought. His also his overall strategy for winning wars was used in the Gulf War. Now, in terms of Boyd, just a fascinating character, okay? I'm going to tell an amusing story about him at the end of this video, of what you can really achieve if you want to. And anyone is capable of winning at Forex trading, as I've said in numerous videos. You've really got to want to do it in the right way. The story is about when he was going to be court-martialed by the US military and how he got away with it. But we'll come to that later, because I'm sure most people want to know his kind of mental map for success. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to a storyboard and discuss in more detail. All right, I'm just going to do a very basic introduction to OODA loops here. There's a lot to them, basically. Here, just want to give the basics, and then you can learn more about them. I'll put some PDFs and some video links beneath this video so you can explore them more. They're really interesting. In my view, obviously their mental map and mental models are being used to help you learn and make better decisions. Now, in terms of mental models in the market, perhaps the person who really got them to be popular amongst serious traders was Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner. And he said, it's the only way to trade the markets. You've got to have multiple mental models, and you've got to keep updating them, improving them, and you've got to make sure you're keeping up with the market, which is constantly changing. Okay, it's constantly mutating. As Paul Tudor Jones once said, you either evolve or you die when you're trading. You can't have a tunnel vision. Charlie Munger's really stressing this point. You can't. It's got to be multidisciplinary. You've got to have a lot of mental models to help you constantly improve and update them. Okay, now that's what OODA loops are as well, despite the fact they were designed for fighter pilots, like I said I think earlier. Used in business, sport, can be used in Forex, and they're just a great way of helping you learn and make better decisions. Now, in terms of the loops here, I'm only going through the basic four. When you, or if you want to read up more about the loops, you should also look at Boyd's visual diagram and the subloops that operate within the loops, okay, which all link to each other. But let's just go through it in basic form about how it works. In terms of the first thing you do, you observe. It could be anything. You want to observe the situation. You want to observe it as if you're an outsider. You want to be outside of that situation, detach yourself as much as possible, okay, so you can try and see the reality. Now, you might be thinking, well, it just means, yeah, I've got to keep my emotions out, and that's it. It's a little bit more than that, actually. Of course, you've got to keep your emotions out of trading, but you've got to understand what orientation is. Now, in terms of orientation, to orient, you're going to use different mental models, okay, which are influenced by your genetics, okay. When I say genetics, obviously, that is going to be basically your emotions, cognitive biases within your brain, which aren't necessarily emotional at all, okay. You have to cope with the biological link to your emotions. Discussed all these in other videos. You can go and look them up if you want, but plenty of things are influenced in terms of your genetic makeup. Then you've got your cultural tradition. That's going to be different for different people, of course. But I think the main cultural tradition in Forex trading, which needs to be overcome, is basically coming out of very ordered, structured lives for most people, then dealing with uncertainty with no hiding place. Most people find that extremely difficult to do. Then you've got a myriad of previous experiences, which are going to be, how would I put it, unique to each person. So, for example, a simple example could be, I don't know, let's think, let's say you've not had much success in your life, you failed at everything you've done, you come in to trade Forex, that is in the back of your mind and could cause you to fail again because you haven't got confidence. I mean, it's just one example. There's obviously a huge amount of examples. They're all personal to us. Now, orientation is the most important part of the loop, okay? It's Schwerpunkt, as Boyd called it, which is a German word which translated means the main emphasis. Your aim really is to see the reality of the situation the best you can with the mental models that you're using. Now, in terms of mental models, I'll just discuss them in a little bit more detail in a moment. Then, obviously, after orientation comes decision. You make the decision off the existing mental models, and then you act, and the experiences and consequences of the approach that you have just taken are looped back to observe. Okay? Now, in terms of think about this was actually designed for fighter pilots. So very much it's all about agility, according to Boyd, and flexibility over process. Your mental models must not be complicated. They must be very, very simple. You know, fighter pilots, you know, it's quick, isn't it? What's going on? You don't have too much time. So the processes or mental models should not be too complicated. Agility and flexibility are what you need. Well, that does apply to Forex trading, actually, because if your processes are too complicated in terms of the way you make your trades, you know, it's the more inputs you've got, the more likely it is to fail, as George Soros says. You know, the mental models need to be very simple. They need to be very flexible as well. And you have different models for different situations, effectively, that you face. So, for example, my swing trading model would be different to my long-term trend following model, which might be different to how I would trade an extreme sentiment blow-off. Okay, they'd all be basically simple models, but they're applicable to different situations, and other models will cross over with them. Okay, now in terms of destruction and construction analysis, a lot of what Boyd teaches is basically to be ruthless in your analysis of how you have performed and learn from it. And yeah, most people can't orient, but they don't want to. They don't want to face up to their mistakes. You know, many people deny them, blame them on other people. other traders would just simply not be brutally honest enough with themselves to see the mistake. I mean, it sounds easy. I'll see your mistakes. It's not as easy as most people think. And you've got to be very ruthless with yourself. And in terms of just one simple example for me, a few years ago, really, I kept getting battered in my swing trading, always stopped out. And I realised the reason why. I needed a much more aggressive entry. I was giving it too much confirmation. And due to the risk reward that I wanted, I was always getting stopped out. So basically, that would be a simple example of a model being changed effectively. I think in terms of, I don't know if I said this earlier, I'll try and put this in a PDF of how you can actually do the OODA loops in Forex trading with a step-by-step process with more information in. But the orientation stage, you've got to get those models and keep improving them, and also develop other models. And it's one of those things. It sounds easy. Anyone can do it, but it's not easy. Boyd was actually saying that, sure, it's not easy, but if you're just a little bit better than the other person who's trying to do it, then you're going to do well. And most people in Forex trading just won't make the effort. Okay. Now, in terms of I put two quotes on the clip of Boyd, why he was winning so quickly was understanding. It wasn't instinct. And by that I mean he developed the models. Instinct does come into play a bit, but it's understanding. Then you just can do things automatically. Okay. It's not just instinctive feel, if that makes sense. There's an understanding behind it. You can act on instinct, of course, and get obliterated in the markets, okay, unless you have understanding of what's going on. Also, actions without deciding are reckless, or actions without decision are reckless. He also says that. Well, what does he mean by that? A decision means action, doesn't it? Well, no, the decision comes from the orientation, doesn't it? A lot of people act without a decision off orientation. They just act off an emotional impulse, or they just throw a trade in the market because they've seen prices go up or whatever it might be. This is a kind of process that is designed to keep you on track. I hope I've explained that correctly. Now, if you go great traders, and I just listed out some quotes here. My approach works not by making valid predictions, but by allowing me to correct false ones. George Soros. Well, what's he saying here? He's really saying what OODA loops are all about. He's not trying to make predictions as such. What he wants to do is to correct false ones as well. Okay, and he actually said, I've survived by learning from my mistakes. Ray Dalio, I love mistakes because we learn from them. Of course, when you're doing something like OODA loops, you are making mistakes all the time. It's just important that you improve and correct. Okay? Ray Dalio said it's okay to make a mistake once, but what's unforgivable is to make a mistake over and over again. Okay? How many traders make the same mistakes over and over again? Also, in terms of Bruce Covenor, I try and perform many different mental models, alternatives as possible. You do. You're always trying to have different pictures. And also when you're doing orientation, you should be basically looking at the counter argument as well. So, run the argument against what you want to do. Okay? Does your argument still make sense? Detach yourself from it. In terms of the framework that OODA loops give you, it just gives you something to cope with an uncertain world, okay? And also, I think it gives you the, what's the word for it? Not motivation. It gives you the sort of impetus, let's say, to actually think, I really do need to analyse myself brutally. I really do need to basically accept my mistakes, what I've done wrong, analyse, improve, etc., etc. Go through the effort of doing it, you know. It's a continual process. Yeah, I just find it all quite fascinating, really. And it does go quite deeply into the philosophy behind the loops and on all the various other things he talks about as well. This is just a very basic introduction. But I did say earlier on, I was going to say an amusing story about him, which tells you a lot about the guy, actually. He was really obsessed with getting US fighter pilots to be the best. And he wanted to work out how to do it. So he wanted to study every dogfight that he could that US fighters had been in, which was held by the Air Force. They just wouldn't give him the data. So he just took it from their computers, hacked it, analysed all the data, and built up a dossier, for want of a better word, of what he'd learned. And actually, to help him, he actually taught himself advanced mathematics and calculus as well. When the military found out, they were furious, wanted to court-martial him. When he showed them the dossier, they had to give him 2 commendations, because basically in his dossier, the information changed the way air combat would be forever. So he didn't really have a lot of respect for authority. He was always clashing with his superiors. He was kind of well respected by his men, but he was so driven, focused, and kind of just on a path that he was just a very strong character. Men under him used to call him Genghis Khan or the Mad Colonel. But yeah, what a massive influence he's had. Yeah, well, not just in the military, but yeah, in terms of a lot of the work, or all the work he's done in psychology as well. And yeah, he was never really interested in money. That was what he was about at all. He was kind of interested in personal fulfillment and doing things that he really enjoyed. He could have made a ton more money than he did. He just didn't bother. And I think, again, that's a lesson for Forex traders. Too many traders are obsessed with money. If you're not obsessed with money, you'll probably make it. If you are, then you'll never make it. But in terms of this video, that's the basic introduction. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching me as usual. Take care. Have a good day.